Professor Gay, have a seat. Yes, we get to sit down. So thank you for this insight into the machine room of an Ivy League academic institution.
Yes, yes. My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Do you find like a willing audience for this story in the US?
There is an audience. It's the willing part that that requires some nuance in describing. I think there are those who sense that we've lost our way, particularly with respect to how we engage with our donor base, but not entirely clear what that looks like, and more importantly, how we might change it.
How to get out, yeah. Well, you talked about an ecosystem of funding that has to be diversified in order to guarantee independence. Now, this ecosystem of funding is a bit different here in the Netherlands. Okay. So I just wanted to clear just a few things that to me aren't really clear.
Yeah.
For example, what is the difference between philanthropy and an endowment?
So philanthropy is the broad category, and it consists of two different types of private funding: endowments and current use. So an endowment is basically an investment fund that puts out a steady stream of income and is supposed to provide resources in perpetuity to support the university. Most endowments are highly restricted, and universities impose typically additional restrictions on how much of the endowment they take from year to year. And that is to protect the principal and while also making sure there's budgetary stability. And with current use, let me just say one other thing. So the other kind of bucket of philanthropy is what were called current use funds. And that's the money that supports a lot of current needs, new initiatives, and the whole intention of that money is for it to be spent down to zero. But like endowments, there are also a lot of restrictions around it.
You say they're restricted. Does that mean they're earmarked?
Yes, they're earmarked for particular purposes, sometimes highly specific purposes, and also both how and when the money can be released is part of the restrictions. And so that's why, as just inconceivable as it seems, that's why even with, for example, a $53 billion endowment, as one institution has, might still leave an institution feeling like they do not have sufficient resources to do all the things they want and need to do.
Exactly. And could you give us an idea what part of all the funding, all the money like Harvard and Columbia need, what part comes from philanthropy and endowments?
Huge. So I will use the example of Harvard. So if you look university-wide, about 45% of the operating revenue comes from philanthropy. Again, a mix of endowments and current use. And then another 15-20% will come from grants and contracts, primarily with the federal government. So these are kind of big buckets that support the university.
Yeah. So you just described the difficulties with all these demands, losing your scientific independence. Mm-hmm. Jan Willem just talked about this similar difficulty with public money.
Yes.
So you could say that as a university governor, you're sailing between Scylla and Charybdis.
Yes.
And I was wondering, these demands that come from Scylla and Charybdis you have to go through, are these demands aligned? Do they somehow cooperate?
At this moment, yes, the demands are very aligned. Now, ordinarily, at least in the US context, government funding is tied to the academic merits of a proposed research or educational project. That is that's the status quo ex ante. The current administration has chosen to attach all sorts of ideological strings to funding that, again, in normal times, based purely on academic merit. At the same time, the current administration, the Trump administration, has many allies in the donor base for elite universities. And so we find ourselves in this moment where the pressure is coming from both directions. The conditions necessary to secure government funding are very similar to the conditions imposed for the promise of future philanthropy. So that's put universities in a very difficult position with a lot of pressure to comply.
Yeah. And in that, do you then experience what I would call a politicization of the private sphere as well?
Everything is politicized.
Everything is completely politicized.
Yeah, there are no distinctions to be made anymore. Everything is political, everything is politicized, and everything is pursued within an ideological framework.
No, I mean, like this earmarking, you can also think of earmarks that are non-political, but very specific.
Yes, exactly. So, an example might be there are significant endowments held by Harvard that are earmarked for financial aid, for example. Which has been an enduring priority for the university. It is a very highly specific activity, but also is one that kind of goes to the core of the university. So yes, it's possible to be earmarked and yet still not be deeply ideological.
Yeah. You said when some donors began to think of themselves as shareholders, we were reluctant to push back. But pushing back, would that immediately mean losing their money?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be facetious here, but I think we can be honest about the costs of standing our ground, while still insisting that that is what is necessary to do. And that's my view on things. That yes, there will be a cost. The risks are high. The stakes are high. But what I'm trying to do now is to make the risks of our current approach equally visible and offer a roadmap for how we might operate given that.
Yeah. Harvard is, I think, the richest university in the States,
yes.
Probably the most prestigious as well. It's therefore considered a token case these days when it comes to the independence of academia and how to deal with the Trump administration. So when the administration came with demands just after its beginning, such as eliminating programs on equity, diversity and inclusion, Harvard initially recoiled fiercely at the demands. It said that we will go to court and we will fight the $2 billion cut in subsidies, and we will fight these attacks on the academic freedom. But the latest news is that Harvard is complying to part of it. Just to give you an example, Harvard renamed its Office of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion and Belonging, quite a long name, but it is now called the Office for Community and Campus Life. So from a distance now, how do you look at that? Is that merely symbolic or is it a surrender?
So, the posture of the institution seems to be one of compliance, and this is distressing, not only for those of us who are on campus and facing the consequences directly, but also for all of those in higher ed who look to Harvard for leadership and guidance. I will speak to what it looks like and feels like on campus. There is a mix of zero tolerance and policy ambiguity that leaves faculty and students really unsure about what we can say, do, and teach. So that's hard. As you alluded to, there has been an elimination of programs, offices, activities that for at least 20 years, the university has insisted represent institutional imperatives, but now they're gone. And so at best, that's disorienting, and at worst, it really undermines trust in the institution. And then there's the prospect of paying a $500 million ransom to the Trump administration.
So this is settle to settle. Yeah.
Will it settle it? Really, the number is arbitrary, and will it solve anything? And certainly what message does it send, and what precedent does it set for every other academic institution? So this is an uneasy and dispiriting time for those of us who are on campus.
But like renaming such an office, you could also rename the office and leave the program just intact. Which of the two is happening?
So, see earlier comment about policy ambiguity? We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah. So, another hard question maybe. You might wonder if in the recent past, whether the academia have navigated themselves well in very thorny discussions. Think of claims that speaking of women might offend transgender and queer students. I was thinking, didn't that play right into the hands of hard right?
No, academia is not to blame. The agenda here is about destroying knowledge institutions because they are centers of independent thought and information. That's what's going on here. That is the story. Nothing justifies that. Nothing explains that, other than authoritarians don't like independent centers of thought and information. Let me just say one more thing I'll have to say here is I would encourage us all to take note of the through line of misdirection that has been a central feature of this political moment, getting us to argue about supposed excesses of academic jargon and excesses of the progressive left. It's all about getting us to focus on that and not pay attention to the power grab that is underway. None of that matters. It's not, there is, the truth here is that our government, the American government, is attacking higher ed and the university.
And you say
for no other reason,
no matter
other
what,
than
they would always
just,
find a stick.
Yes, because that is the agenda. That is the very agenda. And I urge us to not get distracted. Because again, I think that's part of the strategy is to get us talking about this. So we somehow think that we are to blame for this authoritarian power grab. No, there is no justification. Just as the number of $500 million is completely arbitrary and will solve nothing, there is no justification.
My final question. Last April, the government demanded universities to perform a viewpoint diversity audit. I was thinking, diversity audit?
Yes.
What do they mean?
So those of us who are on the ground, faculty and students, we all have this question because, frankly, that's the environment, one in which there are a broad range of views, a broad range of disciplines, a broad range of perspectives alive and well in our university. That has been our status quo for generations. And so trying to understand now what viewpoint diversity means in this new context, again, it's part of the confusion of this moment and why those of us who are, on the receiving end of these consequences are struggling to figure out how to adapt. What do we need to be doing differently? Because that is what we have been doing.
Yeah.
That accounts for the vibrancy of any academic community.
Yeah, I thought in this diversity was like reframed completely. That you have to check whether we have enough conservative ideology being taught. Is that what is happening?
So yes, again, that is using an ideological framework to design what a campus should look like. And the work of the academy, again, for generations, has been to pursue knowledge outside of the framework of ideology. Okay, well, we wish you all the strength and good luck in the United States. And for now, thank you so much for sharing this with us. Professor Claudine Gay. Thank you.